It's about 10 lines from the top of the page. The line in Magmar starts through. So it goes like this. Rabbi Yosef, Brei Rabbi Nechunya, maybe it's Rabbi Menachem, asks from Rabbi Yehuda. We're going to have Rabbi Yehuda later today as well. Very important. Second generation Amira. It says, Shnaim she'yishen b'mita achas. You have two people that are sleeping in one bed. Two men sleeping in one bed. Can they turn to the side to recite Shema? Now, the assumption here is that they're naked. And the question is, can they recite Shema like that? Possibly their bodies are touching. And what, like this, it would be their backs would be touching. Right. Their seat.
How come it's not art error when you have buttocks?
Oh, that we'll see from Rapunas shortly. So that's the question. Can he recite Shema in such a position when he's in contact with another person that's in the bed? So Amar Lei, Rav Yehuda, we mentioned yesterday, is a student of Shmuel. He says, Hachi Amar Shmuel, he's a student of Rabbi and Shmuel. He says, Hachi Amar Shmuel, so says Shmuel, Bafilu Ishtiyim. Not only if it's another man, but even if it's his wife. Even if it's his wife, he can recite the Shema in such a position when they're laying back to back. There's a problem over here. How can they recite Shema when they're laying? If things have to be adjusted. Exactly, we said it. Okay, Maskevla Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef has a question on this. Rav Yosef is the Rav Yosef Brei Rabbi Nechunya, I think. Or else it's strange. Rabbi Yosef says, one second, you quoted to me Shmuel, but the truth is, Ishtei v'loimi ba'yacher, it says, Shmuel is saying that his wife, and for sure someone else, is could be in the bed when he's reciting the Shema. Adarabba, on the contrary, Ishtei kegufay, his wife will not cause him thoughts because he's so accustomed to being in the same bed with his wife. That shouldn't be anything surprising. But Acher, another person, lav kegufay, is not like his own flesh, and that could cause thoughts that should be not appropriate when he's reciting the Shema. So we have a machlekes. We have a machlekes Shmuel and Rabbi. Shmuel and Rabbi. Shmuel says anyone is allowed to be in the bed. If his wife, it could be anyone also. Rabbi says only his wife, but not someone else.
Question. If his wife is in the bed, I'm assuming it's obviously the time that his wife can be in the beds. All of a sudden now his wife, he has no interest in. If you told me his wife was in the next bed, so I understand it's not a problem. In the same bed, it sounds like it would be a question.
Yeah, so the explanation for that here is that because he's so accustomed to his wife that it doesn't need to be something that's arousing. Meisvei, the Gemara has a question. Two people are in one bed. For the Bais. You can turn around, you turn to the side, so they're laying back to back, and they recite the Shema.
You already said she's probably from the Shema. Can we just do that like a couple of ago?
What?
Ooh, interesting. Interesting.
I want to see the ladder for Shema, but here it seems compiled.
Okay, so let's say, what is this referring to? What is this referring to? We have to see shortly. We don't know. It could be it's just two strangers in one bed. So Betanya, I'm sorry. Yeah, Betanya Achritin is another brisa. A Yoshin B'mita. Someone's in a bed. The one of Bnei Bais B'tzidai, and his sons and his household. Who's his household? We don't know his household. Possibly. Hold it. Okay, we'll see shortly. It's lending to possible explanations. It says like this. So if he has his family members in his bed, he should not recite the Shema unless there's a talus like a sheet that's between them. Then it's mutter. If his household, his sons in his household are minors, so then it's permissible.
That's where
I assume that it's not his wife.
No, but here, Rashi says, yes, but we still, okay,
1 second. Right here.
Right.
So, Bishlam, the Gemara goes like this. We have two brises. One says that two people can recite the Shema in the bed. The other brise says they cannot, unless there's a talus between them. The contradiction. The Gemara says, Bishlam, the Rabbi Yosef like kasha. According to Rabbi Yosef, we can explain it. The first brise is referring to his wife. The second brise that says Bnei Beisai is not his wife. Other strangers, other people. So that's why I didn't want to translate that one of Bnei Beisai, that Bnei Beisai needs his wife, because it's not so clear. Rabbi Yosef clearly holds that it's not his wife. Why over there is it forbidden? Because Bnei Beisai means other people in the family that's not his wife. But according to Shmuel, I always think about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. They had the grandparents and they had the remember? Okay, so there used to be a book. As well as all other, I think, all other movies. So, yeah, so Rabbi Yosef, we can respond because Rabbi Yosef holds that there's a difference between his wife and other people. So if you have the brises, so one says yes, one says no. We have the differences between, right?
But so we have Rabbi Yosef says it's his kids, is somebody else.
Yeah, it's not his wife. Shmuel kasha, but Shmuel's going to learn like what the way you said. But according to Shmuel, it's a question because according to Shmuel, everyone is permitted to be in the bed. If his wife is permitted, everyone is also. So Amalach Shmuel's going to respond to the question on him the following. He says, "The Rabbi Yosef minicha, you think you really fixed it according to Rabbi Yosef? You have a problem according to Rabbi Yosef. V'hatanya was taught in a brisa. Now this is a strange quote over here when we say V'hatanya, because it apparently is quoting the brisa that we said before. However, Tosfos says that we're quoting a new brisa here. What does Rashi say? There's different versions to what we're quoting. Let's see. Hayashin b'mita. Someone is in a bed. Now, if you look, the Bach actually takes out the word bana. Goes like this. Hayashin b'mita. Ubnei Beisai b'mita. In his household is in the bed as well. Referring to his wife here. Lo yikra kriya shema. He cannot recite the Shema. Elam kenei setalisa machzekes b'neim, unless they have a sheet or a talus between them. Now, here we have an opinion that doesn't go like anyone. Rabbi Yosef said that he couldn't say Shema when his wife was in the bed. Shmuel said his wife and others could be in the bed. They can still recite, and or others could be. You can still recite the Shema. Here we have a bride that doesn't go with either one. So Shmuel says like this: Elamaya slach l'meimer ishta Rabbi Yosef Tanai. You're going to need to say that there's a machlekes here, even according to Rabbi Yosef, because we have this bride that forbids the Shema if his wife is in the bed. So you're saying there's a machlekes, so that resolves my issue as well. There's a machlekes. Even according to Rabbi Yosef, it doesn't work out perfectly. You still have to say there's other opinions. So according to Shmuel, also, it says that anyone can be in the bed when he's reciting the Shema. So there's other opinions.
Okay. What the Rambam passes that if you're there with your wife,
you can. Yes. So we would be now. That doesn't tell me if I'm going like Rabbi Yosef or I'm going like Shmuel. Maybe the Rambam says more. Does Rambam say more than that?
He didn't discuss the kid.
No. What about other people? Other people in the bed. Okay. So now my assumption is that he's going like
all other people is very challenging.
That he's going like Rabbi Yosef. But we'll see shortly. Amar Mar. We learned before, we're quoting a brisa. Amar Mar is re-examining a brisa that we quoted. It says, this one can turn to the side and recite the Shema. The problem is, but he has his behind, his seat is touching the other person, and that's shouldn't be appropriate. That his behind is touching the other person's behind, they're laying back to back, and that's he's reciting the Shema. But this is a support to Rav Huna. Erva means naked, the person's nakedness. But the back side is not considered erva. It's not considered nakedness. In other words, its exposure is not, or it being in contact with another person is not considered anything that would lead to thoughts that would be not appropriate for Shema. Lema Messiah Leila Rav Huna. So we have one support for Rav Huna, but let's say that we have another support for Rav Huna. A woman whose private area is different than a man, she's able to conceal her private area by sitting in the ground and with her legs together, and there's her private area is not exposed because her legs are closed, and she's sitting on the ground, and she's able to separate challah. Now, separating challah means that she could take the challah and recite the blessing that's said over that, because she's not considered naked. Why? Because she's covered because of her legs and because she's on the ground. But not a man, because a man, his private organs are exposed, they're protruding outward. So he won't be able to conceal that while he's just by sitting on the ground. So this could be a support for Rav Huna. How could this be a support for Rav Huna? Because Rav Huna says that the backside is not considered erva. Now, if someone's sitting on the ground, you could still see the backside. So you see, the backside isn't the problem. Gemara says it's actually not such a good support. It's possible that she was like sitting on sand, or like she dug in so that her seat is covered by the soft earth that she's sitting in. So it doesn't mean that her behind is exposed. It could be that the reason why she was allowed to take challah was because she was covered because of the sand or the soft earth that she's in.
I thought the question is about the front, not the back.
No, the Rav Huna says that the back is not a problem. So, but when she's sitting down, she's allowed to recite the Shema. When she's sitting down, she's allowed to take challah. We're thinking that if she's sitting on a seat or on the ground, her back is exposed. At least the upper part of her behind is exposed. So we're saying no, not necessarily. It's not a proof. Could be that she's like dug into the ground. The seat is dug into the ground, and there's nothing exposed there. Could be it's covered. I noticed on the side there's a discussion about reciting the bracha on mitzvahs that needs to be recited standing. And here we're saying that she's allowed to recite this bracha sitting. Yeah. If any bracha on mitzvahs is supposed to be said standing. There was a quote that said, what's the original brachas on mitzvahs that are supposed to be said standing? Torah. The brachas of Torah said standing. The bracha on the Eimer. And tzitzis. And they would quote, Atzas Hashem Yisakim. Atzas is Eimer, tzitzis, and Torah. Atzas Hashem Yisakim means that the counsel of Hashem stands, the advice of Hashem stands. So those are the brachas that you say standing. But the truth is that all brachas and mitzvahs you say you're supposed to say standing. And this would be a question from this Gemara. They quote on the side, the Magen Avraham asks this. And he answers that this is considered brachas hananin, because it's in order to be able to eat the food.
But you don't say food bracha standing.
You don't have to say food bracha standing. That's why that's why the woman can recite this blessing while she's sitting.
That's the point.
But then they quote over here. I don't know who the notes are in my Gemara. I don't know if the other Gemaras have this, but mine has like a little pen mark. So put this in. It says the Gra doesn't accept this. Okay, Amar Mar.
Yeah.
The master said that means we're going back to re-examine a brisa. If his children that are in the bed are minors, then it's permissible. How old is considered a minor? Rav Chizda says it says a girl until she's 3, v'tinik ben teshan of yemechad, and a boy until he's 9. They could be in the bed when a person's reciting Shema, even if their skin is in contact with the father when he's reciting the Shema. It's not a problem. They're not the age of having relations, and so there would be no thoughts over there. Ikadamri, there are those that say Tinaikas Basir Aleph Shana.
Rachel was married at 3.
Yes, so here we're saying under 3. We're saying under 3. Up until 3. And some say Tinaikas Basir Aleph Shana V'Yemechad V'Tinik Ben Shnei Mesir Shana V'Yemechad. A girl until she's 11, and a boy until he's 12. So we're talking about a year before bar mitzvah. That this is only if her breasts are formed and her hair is growing. It means when she's in this intermediate age, when she's not an adult yet, she's not 12, but she is 11. It would only be if her body is matured. That would be a way that would be a form that would be appealing to a man. According to this opinion. Otherwise, it would be the younger age. What's the Edi v'Edi? Both hold? What's the Edi v'Edi? I don't know why Edi v'Edi. Edi v'Edi. What do you have over there? Edi v'Edi. With regards to both, the girl who's 11, the boy is 12. So, both the boy and the girl would have to have their body matured. Okay. Amalei Rav Kanala Rav Ashi. It sounds like it's only talking about the girls.
I asked a question on the case where someone is in bed with another person.
Right.
And it seemed to imply there was another person, not his wife.
Right.
And now you're telling me here that you can't be in bed with another person over the age of 9.
Right.
So what were we discussing in the beginning?
Oh, so we had a contradiction between the Baises.
What was the holiday with anybody but his wife?
Another guy.
Yeah.
Your friend was
You're
sleeping
telling me
with
right here, you can't be in bed with another guy. By the way, we have plenty of sources for that.
No.
Not in a relationship. Someone
No.
just sleeping there.
You want to recite the Shema,
Right?
and there's someone else in the bed. Is that acceptable?
Here you just established that you can't, but that's someone else overnight.
Right. Right. So that was the contradiction in the Baises.
Right, that's it's saying it's either between 2 prices. I mean,
the
two different-
would be,
2 different
what are you saying?
places.
I don't know if it's going to fit with our Gemara. I don't know if that's going to fit with our Gemara. I don't know if that's going to fit. Okay. Amalei Rav Kana Rav Ashi. Hassam. Rav Kana says to Rav Ashi, Amar Rava, Afagav the Tiyufta the Shmuel, Hilchasa Kavasei the Shmuel, Hachamai. We had a Gemara yesterday that was talking about tefillin by a person's head when he's sleeping together with his wife. Where Shmuel said that was acceptable, and we had a kasha on Shmuel. But we said even though we have a question, but the halacha is like Shmuel. Now over here we also have a statement from Shmuel that a person can recite the Shema when he's in bed, whether it's his wife or someone else. And is the halacha like Shmuel here as well? Amalei. So Rav Ashi responds, you put them all in the same weaving, and you're going to weave everything together just because we said once the halacha is like Shmuel, everything has to be exactly the same. It depends where it said it. Over there, the halacha is like Shmuel. We didn't say that over here. The halacha is not like Shmuel here. Amalei Rav Mari Rav Papa. Rav Mari says to Rav Papa, Sar Yaitzi Bebigdei Mao. What about if a person has a hole in his clothing and his hair is sticking out of his clothing, private area, and that there's a hole there, it's like those jeans.
Yeah, I was going to say
California.
They pay more money.
Oh, here we go.
So 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 if there's hair that's sticking out, is that considered erva? The Karla sar. He says, oh, it's here. It's like meaning that that's nothing. It's just here.
Like, hear you.
Oh.
My pronunciation.
Okay. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Tefach bi'isha erva. One handbreadth of exposed area on a woman's body is considered erva. The Gemara says lamai.
Any part of the body?
In the area that's normally covered.
Even a married woman.
We're going to see about the hair shortly, and to what extent it's relevant to what extent it's dependent on the custom of the place. That's a discussion in Shulchan Aruch. In other words, in areas where a woman's face is covered in those countries, so it would be including the face as well. But to us, it's not like that. But to us, we have the women go sleeveless. So the upper arm, is that going to be? That's a discussion in the place and how much is dependent on the area, on the location. So, Lamai, what is this relevant for? Eily Melista Kuli, but we're talking about gazing at her. Rav Sheshes says, why were the jewelry that was from the that was taken from the loot from the war with Maya? Why did they use the jewelry? Why did they put together the jewelry that's on the concealed parts of the body, together with the bracelets and earrings and all of that? In other words, they had certain types of jewelry that were put over the private areas. They had one of them, which is called a kumaz, which Rashi says was a inserted like earring, like it's pierced, and it would cover the private areas to make sure that they didn't have relations. That was a type of jewelry. Now that when the Jewish people went to war with Midian and Maya, they took that jewelry and they didn't keep it. They gave it to the temple or whatever. Then it was because that was an atonement for the thoughts that they had at looking at the daughters of Maya. Okay, so the question is, if it's an atonement for those thoughts, so it should only be the kumas, those private types of jewelry. What about the bracelets and this? What thoughts was from that? So the Gemara here explains, Malach is coming to tell you that that it doesn't matter. Even if someone looks at a small finger of a woman, it's as if he's looking at her nakedness.
It's true.
So why are we saying over here that it's a tefach, that it's forbidden to look at? Any part of her body, it's forbidden to look at, even a small finger. When we said a tefach, we're not talking about what you're allowed to gaze at. We're talking about when you're allowed to recite the Shema, if his wife is exposed one tefach. That's the question. His wife, technically, he's allowed to look at his wife, but when he's reciting Shema, they can't be exposed the area of a woman that's has to be, the area needs to be clean and needs to be holy. If there's an exposed area, so that's not appropriate for reciting the Shema. Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says, "Sheik b'isha erva." The thigh of a woman is erva, referring to. Let's assume we're referring to reciting the Shema. Could also be to gaze at her, but if that's the case, well, that's a good, interesting discussion. It's definitely a thigh. The question is if it's the lower leg as well.
When we learned an animal cover the
Sheikh
is the neck, the breast.
The chaza is the chest, and the sheikh is the thigh. Now, what is the thigh? Is the upper leg or the lower leg? There are poskim that say that it's referring to the lower leg, which would mean that the woman would have to be covered with stockings and all of that. Otherwise, it's just the dress area.
was based on the Mishnah Brewer and this is based on the Mishnah Brewer. The Chazan each suggests that in this context, Shchov denotes the part of the leg between the knee and the ankle.
It's a chumrah. That's a chumrah. Shnemar, as it says in the pasuk, Gali Sheik Over Naris, that reveal the thigh when they're going over the river. I guess they would lift up their dress as they go over the river. The Ksiv Tagal Arvascha, and the following pasuk says that your erva is revealed. The Gam Tircha pasuk, and your shame is seen. So that means that the sheik is erva. Amar Shmuel, Kol B'isha erva. Shmuel says that the voice of a woman, singing voice, that is erva. Shenemar Kikaylech Arav Amarech Nave, because your voice is sweet and your appearance is beautiful. We're seeing that the voice is taiva, right? Could arouse lust. Amar Rav Shesha, Sarbi Isha erva. Shesha says that hair of a woman is erva. Shenemar Sarach Kedarizim. Now this would only be the hair that's normally covered, which means after a woman is married, when she covers her hair. Otherwise, it's exposed. But over here it says that with the description of the hair, that your hair is like a flock of goats, it's saying that it's something nice, which would mean that it would also create taiva. Amar Rabbi Chanina.
So now that you learn all these little possible errors, how does that jive with the story of the lady sitting in the sand?
So the way that fits over there, very good. The way that fits there is that there's different scenarios. There's a woman when she's sitting alone, that her body itself is not erva, except for her private areas need to be covered. Then there's a discussion in the place, and what about women that are together? And then there's what we're learning here, that it would be a man with a woman exposed. So there's a
She was a goat surrounded by geese.
So here we have.
Get him a symbol. How about a hammer? I want a hammer.
For you, right?
Here we have Rabbi Chanina. If you look at this chart of the Amirayim, so at the top of the chart is the end of the Tanaim period, which is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So as the chart should be put like this. As it goes down the generations, so it should be like this. So Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, his student is Rabbi Chanina Bar Chama. Over here we call him Rabbi Chanina. He's a very important student, probably we'd consider the first generation Amira. No, Rabbi Chanina Bais was earlier. This is the top of this chart here, right here in Amira Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Chanina Bar Chama. We also have sometimes Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina, who's his son. Right. This is Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Yechanan learned by him. It says what Rabbi Yechanan did when he passed away. It's an Amira, first generation Amira. It says Anira Isias Rebbe. Rabbi Chanina Bar Chama is saying what he saw by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. I saw Rabbi Shetala Tefillah, that he hung his tefillin like on a hook.
He's trouble now.
The Gemara says, Meisvei, there's a question, someone that hangs his tefillin, he hangs his life. Why tefillin is associated with the person's life. It says someone that wears tefillin, his life is lengthened. And here a person hangs his tefillin. Dorshei Chamurei Samru, it's those people that learn the secrets of the Torah. Some Rashi's gear says Dorshei Rishumais. Here we have Dorshei Chamuris, but it's the same meaning. Amru, they say, your life will be hanging before you. This is someone that hangs his tefillin. That means that he won't know where he's getting his food from, and this is a problem. And here Rabbi went ahead and did it. So the Gemara says like Kasha, it depends what's hanging. There's the bias of the tefillin, and then there's the straps of the tefillin. Okay, the box and the straps. So we could answer that the straps were hanging down by Rabbi, which should be okay. But to hang the bias from the straps, that's a problem. There's another answer. Nothing should be hanging. But all of that is asur. Rabbi kissed the tala. Rabbi hung it in a bag. So there was nothing hanging. The bag was hanging. If that's the case, so what's the chiddush? Nothing was hanging. Well, the whole thing is hanging in a bag. could have said to buy anach sefer Torah that just like the sefer Torah needs to be placed down, it shouldn't be hanging. It has to be placed on a surface. Kamash Malan, the tefillin doesn't need to be placed on a surface. It could hang as long as you're hanging it in a respectful way. Amar Rabbi Chanina Nuri says Rabbi. Chanina says another testimony of what he saw by Rabbi. Shegiek, he belched, burped. Piek, he yawned, Fenasatish, and he sneezed, Barak, and he spat. Mamashrish for big day. And he was removing the lice from his garments. Of Eily Masatif, but he would not put on his talis if it fell off. Those are two separate things, according to Rashi. According to Tosfos, that's one thing, that he would adjust his talis, but he wouldn't, if it fell off, he wouldn't put it back on. When he yawned, he would put his hand on his chin. That means that he would cover his mouth. And the problem is that all of these things were done in middle of davening. In the middle of Shemon Esrei. So he belched, yawned, sneezed, and spat in all the middle of Shemon Esrei.
We decided he's lactose intolerant.
He hasn't had a beer.
Meisvei.
Son, I gotta talk to you.
The question. We quote a Brisa. If someone raises his voice, or not raises his voice, he hears his voice is heard when he davens. He is lacking faith. He thinks if he speaks a little louder, God will hear him. He's lacking faith. The Kutzker said about this. It says someone that comes to davening. Yeah. The Kutzker said that Mashmiach Kele B'Tfilasi means that you come into shul and you just start davening. Because that's not how it works. You have to come, you have to study and learn, prepare. You can't just come in and start screaming. Okay, so he's lacking faith. If someone raises his voice, so he is like the false prophets. The false prophets would call with loud voices, and that's what this person is doing. If he burps and yawns, this is arrogance to do this in the middle of prayer. So when that sneezes, simin rale, it's a bad sign. I'm translating Masatish right now. It sneezes, we'll see shortly. The Yeshayim, and some say Nikter Shemakur, that it's recognizable that he's disgusting. Harak B'Tfilasai, there's different kirsais. Someone that spits in his during prayer, Kilu Rak B'Fnei HaMelech, he's spitting in front of the king. Okay, so when we look at this and we compare it to what Rabbi Chanina says that Rabbi did, we have some questions here. Gemara says, Bishlam and Megai Kumafai, we can explain how he burped and how he yawned, like Kasha Kanlan, say Kanler Tzainai. We said that to belch, to burp, and to yawn, so that's Gasia Ruach, it's arrogance. Well, that would only be arrogance if he's doing it on purpose. He's making himself right. But if it's Lansai, it's just coming to him. So that's not arrogance. What's he supposed to do? Okay, but now we have a question. Rabbi would sneeze, and we say Masatish B'Tfilasi Simin Ralai. So, or some say that it's Nikr Shemakur. So Masatish Kasha, that's a problem. The Gemara answers Masatish Nami like Kasha. That's also not a question. Why? Because Kan Momai Kan Momata. It's an interesting expression. We don't use this in English. We don't say he sneezed from above and sneezed from below. Sneeze, but in Hebrew, the word Masatish could be where either a noise from his nose or from his behind. And the word is not sneeze, but he passes gas, he makes a noise. So yeah, I guess that would be the translation. So that's how we're going to differentiate here. That Rebbe was sneezing. The Brisa was talking about he was passing gas. So the Gemara says, Damar Abzeira, Rav Hamnuna. Zayda says that the following is Tukir Soisir. He sounds like he whispered it to me, Rav Hamnuna. or he asked of me, and it's as valuable to me as all of my learning. Someone that sneezes during davening simin yafalai. It's a good sign. Just like he's getting pleasure down here from sneezing, so too they're having pleasure from him above.
It sounds like Rosh Hashanah. It's not. No, Hataras Nidarim.
Oh, yeah, right. What happens? Oh, and that's interesting. That's the snuff. But what is happening from the sneezing? Someone I saw, one of the commentaries said that it strengthens a person's bones. Okay.
So you say salute.
I thought that came from because originally they would die. They would die. The Menachem says that it strengthens his bones. Here it says sneezing is a source of satisfaction since it offers relief to a person, quoting Rashi.
So where did that thing come from that someone's thinking about you when someone that pulled your ear? That whole issue.
Yeah, I don't know.
Teacher being mad here.
I don't know. I'm not sure where that's from. Ella, it probably has a source, but it's I don't see it in the Gemara.
So why you think?
Ella raka kasha, but we're left with the spitting as a question. Gemara says raka nami like kasha. Spitting is also not a problem. After Rabbi Yehuda, maybe he was doing it like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Hayamid b'tefila." Person's in the middle of prayer, and is damanly right. And he has spit, mavliya b'talisa. He can absorb it into his clothing. But if it's a nice garment, he doesn't want to spit into his garment. So mavliya b'afra kasusai spits it into his turban.
Yeah.
Ravina havikaya chered the Ravashi. Ravina was standing behind Ravashi and is damanly right. And
before and fulfilled on the bottom.
Yeah,
That's it.
so that was what we thought originally. Now we'd be changing it, right? How do we? What do you think? How does Rashi know that? Why does Rashi have to say that? I don't know. Maybe to create the problem. Maybe that's to create the question. So he's standing behind Ravashi. There's Namalei Reik. He has spit. Paskila Ferek. And he spit it behind him.
On the right or left?
It doesn't say.
What is that, Elena?
Amalei.
This
is Shemon Esrei. Don't you hold of what Rabbi Yehuda says that you're supposed to absorb it into the turban? I am finicky. I won't be able to handle that.
All right, I need a question.
Okay.
We're talking about Shemon Esrei.
Yeah.
We know that Minhag Lababa chooses to spit during Aleinu.
If you
But
say
we say Aleinu during
Shemon
Shemon
Esrei,
Esrei.
okay.
Right, that's the question.
What is it on Yom Kippur?
That's what I'm asking. Yeah. What about when Aleinu is in Shemon Esrei?
It's on the Chazeres.
It's a different line.
No, it is.
The first half is there. That's where the spitting.
You don't spit.
You don't spit. Is that because of this? Because you're not supposed to spit during Shemon Esrei?
Not that, Elena.
That Elena's elevated.
I don't know the answer. The Gemara is going to explain someone that raises his voice in prayer, he has lacking faith. There's Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, "Leishanu, this is only if you can concentrate silently or quietly. But if you can't concentrate without speaking, without hearing his own sound, without hearing his own voice, then it's mutter. Then he's allowed to. But this would only be if he's praying alone. But if he's praying with the community, then he's going to be disturbing the others when he's saying the words, and people are quiet. You have one person talking, and everyone has to hear him his davening. That would be disturbing. You have to be quiet when everyone else is saying Shemon Esrei. Even if it's your own davening, and it's going to help your concentration. But there's other people there. In Shulchan Aruch, it mentions one thing about reciting the Shemona Esrei out loud. If you want your family to learn it, the person would be davening with his young children or something, and that he would be allowed to do. It says something, but the family is not a halacha.
I think it says Yachid. I think it says Yachid here.
Yachid.
Then you could go at home and say that.
Right. So that would be following that. Okay, good. Rabbi Abba having come ashtamet made Rabbi Yehuda David Kaboy LeMesa Klara di Yisrael. Rabbi Yehuda had an opinion that you're not allowed to leave Babel. He said that we have to wait for Mashiach to leave Babel. We were sent there, and we have to wait. Now, Rabbi Abba wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Abba is a student of Rabbi Yehuda, so he was avoiding seeing Rabbi Yehuda. He doesn't want to get told off. Then Rabbi Yehuda says, everybody say he violates a positive command of the prophets. Nemar Babala Yubo will be brought to Babel B'Shama, you and over there you will be at Yom Paktiyos until I remember them. No Hashem says God. Amar, so he said, Ezel Veshem Minei Milsa Mi Beis Vada. Let me go hear something from the meeting place, Father Apik, and then I'll go. So what he wants to do is he's going to stand outside. He's going to listen to him out there. He won't enter inside, but he wants to go hear something before he goes. We have a similar Gemara to this, and that's with Reb Zera, also that was going to Eretz Yisrael, and also he wants to avoid Rabbi Yehuda. Azalash Kchela Tana, he goes and he hears that there's a Tana, the Tani Kamed Rabbi Yehuda that's teaching in front of Rabbi Yehuda. Hayamid B'Tfila. If a person, this is what he's teaching. If a person is in the middle of Shemona Esrei, and he sneezes, but over here it doesn't mean sneeze. Over here it means that he passes gas. He waits until the smell goes away, and then he can continue davening. There are those that say he's in the middle of prayer, and he wants to pass gas. So he moves away 4 amas. Why backwards? Since he moves backwards 4 amas, maybe because he was davening against the wall, like it said before. He's supposed to be in front of the wall. So he moves away 4 amas. Then he passes gas. He waits for the smell to go away. And he returns to Mispal and he continues davening. It doesn't say over here about the tefillin, but you have to add that in. That either he wasn't wearing the tefillin or he had to remove the tefillin. Well, they probably wore tefillin the whole day anyway. Vaimer, and look at what happens here. Vaimer, and he adds in Rabbeinu Shalom. He adds in another prayer, even though he's in the middle of Shemona Esrei. The fact that he was able to walk means that he's already interrupted. He can add in this prayer. It says Rabbeinu Shalom. It's a tana nekavim chalum. He created us with holes and hollow parts in our body. It's revealed in front of you our shame. In our shame during our life. And our end is worms and maggots. And then he goes back to where he was up to in Shemona Esrei. Amarlei. Is this Amarlei? Who's he saying it to?
It's like
Rabbi said to.
I thought he was standing outside. If it would just be, which teacher is he saying it to? It's Rabbi Yehuda. If I just came to hear this, it was worth it. Okay. Normally, if a person is not dressed, but he's under his blanket, so he could stick his head out, and it's considered like he's dressed. Right? He's not under his clothing. He's not dressed anyway. Right? So, but if he's under the sheets, so that could be like his clothing. So he sticks his head out and he can recite the Shema. He's dressed. But here it's very cold. He can't put his head out. So what does he do? So what he would do is he would like push his the blanket against his chest, and that would be like a separation between his head and the rest of his body. So it'd be like he's dressed. Some say he has to push it the onto his heart. The Tanakama, what about the first opinion that said against his neck? There's an issue of the heart being exposed to his nakedness. The person is supposed to be covered when he recites the Shema. And so, but covered from what? So, the person's in a house, very small box, naked, so he's covered. But his head is in the box, so he's not covered. So, what part needs to be covered? And what needs to be covered from what? So,
But
you
when
say
you're wearing
Levi,
regular clothes, your part is not covered from the rest of the body.
so if you wear a belt, so your heart is covered.
They wore a rope.
Yeah, you would need to put on a belt. If you're wearing a robe, you need to put on a belt. I noticed on the bottom, in my comments, I don't know who these comments are from, but he quotes a Uraim that says the belt needs to be under the clothing, not on top of the clothing. He says no one mentions this. He says, anyway, whatever the case is, we always put a belt on top, or a gartel is one of the reasons for a gartel is for this reason. Then there's other reasons for a gartel. But there's an issue, liberaya serva, that the heart is exposed to his nakedness. It says, this opinion holds that that's not an issue. Okay, it's a machlekes. And he's going like that opinion. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rabbi Yechon, someone's going in an alley that's dirty. It's like there's a garbage there. It's like a bathroom. And he's miniach yadei al peh b'kari kriya shema. He can put his hand over his mouth when he's reciting the Shema. Somehow that's like a separation. It's a lenient opinion. Amar Rav Chisda, Amalei Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says to Rav Huna, it's by God. Imamrali Rabbi Yochanan bepume. If Rabbi Yochanan himself would tell this to me, late sayasn alei, I would not listen to him. Ikadamri, there are those that say Amar Rabbi Barbachanan Rabbi Shua ben Levi. The Rabbi Barbachanan said the name of Rabbi Shua ben Levi Yamalach b'vaisam. Tenafis miachni adi al peh v'kari kriya shema. That a person can put his hand over his mouth and recite the Shema. Amalei Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says to Rabbi Barbachanan, V'alikim imamrali Rabbi Shua ben Levi bepume late sayasn alei. Even if Rabbi Shua ben Levi himself would tell this to me, I won't listen. Amiyam Rav Huna hachi. Does Rav Huna hold this? That the person can just put his hand over his mouth and recite the Shema in a place that's not clean. A Talmud Chacham, a scholar, should not stand in a dirty place. He can't even think Torah in a dirty place. Here you're saying that he can walk through and recite the Shema. Depends. Standing is a problem. Walking is not a problem. One of the commentaries compared this to the person has his own Dalet Amos. The person can acquire something that's in his Dalet Amos. One of the opinions holds that he has to be standing, because that becomes his area. But if he's walking, if he's moving, there's a rival that holds that. The Dalet Amos is kind of it's only when he's in standing in one place. He's moving, so then it's not. So this is like he's not in any area, so that's why there's a leniency here. So
there are people who will see, let's say they're walking to shul and they're like already pre-davening or dealing with something. And even though dogs may leave excrement in the swale, they're not affected by that.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's less of an issue. In they're talking about yeah, they didn't have the same system of getting rid of waste. I mean, there's descriptions of these things. You walk into places and the whole area stunk.
Neither does Los Angeles.
It was a lot worse. It was a lot worse. It's hard to imagine, but it was horrible. Okay, at least from those descriptions. So now the Gemara says, does Rabbi Yochanan say so that he's allowed to do this? Person can think Torah in any place except for a bathhouse and for a bathroom. And here you're saying that he can walk in the dirty places and recite the Shema. We said in a bathroom he can't. People give the same answer. It depends if he's walking or if he's stationary. Is that so? Rabbi Bo, how because of Basri Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Bo was following Rabbi Yechanan. He's a student on the chart. We have Rabbi Bo under Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Bo under Rabbi Yechanan. He took over after Rabbi Yechanan in Tveria. He says he was in Caesarea. But he took over the yeshiva. After Rabbi Yechanan, I think came Rabami and Ravasi, and then I think Rabbi Bo. So Rabbi Bo was following Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Kakari Kriya Shema, and he was reciting the Shema. This is Rabbi Bo was reciting. Himata the Bais Hamatanafes Ishte, and he was quiet by those places that was dirty. Amalei Rabbi Yechanan, he says to Rabbi Yechanan, Lehechana Hader. Now that we passed the place, where do I go back to finish the Shema? Amalei Im Shoes Kedei Ligmer Skula Chesel Reish. If you waited enough time to finish the whole Shema, then that's considered an interruption. So you have to go back to the beginning. Now, there's a problem here because Rabbi Yechanan says he's allowed to recite the Shema. Now he's telling him that he's discussing about not reciting the Shema in those places. This is what he means to say. This is the answer. Lidi dilai spherely. I actually hold that you could have said the Shema the whole time. But Lidi dach, according to you, the spherulach, that you hold that you can't recite the Shema. If you waited such an amount of time, then that's considered interruption. You have to restart again from the beginning. Tanya Kavaseder Rav Huna, Tanya Kavaseder Rav Chizda. There's Brises that support both of these opinions. Tanya Kavaseder Rav Huna, it says that you're allowed to put the hand over your mouth and recite the Shema. Tanya Kavaseder Rav Chizda. The Bais that supports Rav Chizda, he should not recite the Shema in these 30 places. That he has to stop if he was reciting it beforehand and he gets it there. What happens if he doesn't stop? Rabbi Yasha, Barbarid Rabbi Shua ben Levi. We have him again. We had yesterday. Rabbi Yasha, the grandson of Rabbi Shua ben Levi, regarding him it says, I have given them laws that are not good and statutes that they don't live by. Rabasi Amar Hayamoshchi Habain B'Chavli Hashav. They're pulling sin with ropes that are not strong. He's shaming the word of God. What happens if he does stop? What's his reward? That we had before. Because of this, you'll live long. You have more respect for the words. We'll stop over here.
Only 20% left time to recharge.
Perfect time.
Until the very end.